do. So equations of circles are actually going to go along with a couple of the graphing things that we've already done, which seems kind of strange because they've all been like curves and things like that. But we're about to see how this looks. So, standard equation of a circle. This is going to seem chaotic at times, but it's not really. So the quantity, x minus h squared, we're going to explain all these pieces in a minute, plus the quantity y minus k squared is going to equal your radius squared. But the only things within that are going to change are h and k. We've seen those before already. And r. And so, explain how to find the center and the radius. Okay. All my center is, and then I'm going to make the reference to where we've seen this, is h and k. So if you stop and think for a second, you're like, okay, I've heard that somewhere before. When we were doing the vertex of an absolute value equation, our vertex was h and k. So that's where those come from. My radius, since this is in radius squared, comes from taking the square root of that r squared value. So like if r squared was 25, we take the square root. The radius of our circle is 5. It can be decimals. That happens. It might be a radical now and then. But the process isn't going to change. So, write the equation of a circle with center at the origin and a radius of 5. You have all the information you need already. We have h, we have k, and here's r. So, on this first one, I'm going to be very direct with things. We'll simplify it. So here, if I'm plugging numbers in, I have x. You can't really do the opposite of 0, so I'm just going to put it in this way for now. And then plus y minus k, or the opposite of k, which again, can't really do with 0, equals my radius squared. Now, we don't want to leave it that way. We always want to simplify things if we can. So if you're taking 0 away from something, you're really not changing it. So this is really just x squared. This is really just y squared. And 5 squared, 5 times 5, not 5 times 2, is 25, and I have the equation of my circle. If, and we'll stop for a second after this one, if, write the equation of the circle from number 3 if it's shifted 4 units to the right and down 4 units. You're like, okay, so let's think about this for a minute. Our center had been at 0, 0. When you're looking at any coordinate point, the first coordinate point is x, the second one is y. So when I go to move this 4 units to the right means I'm taking my x value and I'm adding 4 to it. So if I shift that 4 to the right, that's going to be 4. My y would be my up or down. Okay, I'm going down 2 units. So my y is going down 2, or we're subtracting 2 from what that first value is. But that's not the whole question. It wants the equation of the circle. Well, I have the center of it now. That doesn't change my radius at all. My radius is still 5. We've just picked up the circle and moved it to a different place. And so now when I go to make my equation, again, this is my h and k. But when I'm making my equation, it's x, the opposite of h. The opposite of positive 4 would be minus or negative, plus y. The opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. So we're basically just changing signs on our center. And my radius didn't change, so it's still 5 squared, or 25. Okay. So any questions on where we're plugging our h or k from, things like that? So if we've got that base part down, the rest of this is going to be smooth. Okay. So what if we want to graph? Okay, we still need to be able to pluck that information out. So graph the circle, name the radius, name the center. All right. As we saw here, if I just see x and y and I see no values, it means my center's at the origin. It's at 0, 0. My radius, that's radius squared, so you just take the square root of whatever that is. If it comes out nice, that's nice. And so when it comes time to graph then, once we plot our center, here's what I like to do. I like to go ahead and go out the radius in all 4 directions. So I go up 3, left 3, down 3, and right 3, but I'm not making a diamond. I'm making a circle. So I'm going to do the best I can. It's not always going to be pretty, but I'm going to try to hopefully not make it look too much like a flat tire or something like that, but definitely not, pointed sides as you work through. So I'm going to freeze frame for a moment. Try out number 6, or if you really want to go, crazy, you can try 7 as well. I'm going to freeze this, and then I'm going to get both of those up here for us. And we'll make sure that we're the same spot here with things. As you're finishing up with those, you can kind of check and see we've unfrozen here. Just keep reminding yourself to switch that H sign, switch that K sign, and then just take the square radius. We should be, as long as we're plotting our points well, we should be in good shape, hopefully, on those. Issues with graphs. Okay, so far so good. So what other pieces to the puzzle do we have here to do? Okay, one more with the graphs. Reminder, sometimes we'll have our opposite of H or our opposite of K, but if you don't panic. It just means that 0 will be that point. And then again, it just comes down to taking your time. -3 is 0. -3 is the x value, not the y. So we just go left 3. Don't go anywhere else. Get our center, get our radius, and work through. And as what has become our habit, if we go one direction with things, we try to do both. So we started with the equation, getting the center, radius, and drawing it. Now we're going to be given the center and the drawing, and we need to come up with the other info. So, looks like our center is at -2, -4. Our radius, you can go any direction you want from the center out to the edge. Get our info. Make my equation. X opposite of h squared plus y opposite of k squared equals my radius squared. Just working it backwards. One more quick freeze. Try out number 10. Find your center. Draw it in if it helps. Label your pieces and see where we end up. Again, we end up on the y-axis. So our x value would be 0. Radius, we still got 3. If you put x minus 0 squared, it wouldn't be wrong. Okay? Normally in a key, you're going to see it simplified like that, but it wouldn't hurt to have that there either. The biggest thing here, since it's a pattern, it just kind of keeps developing, is that you're reading carefully. What do I mean? Check out number 12. A lot of people, if they were doing this on practice or homework, would get into the habit of going, okay, the center is h and k, the number after is my radius. Ooh, but it's not. That one's a diameter. So if the diameter is 4, how would I find the radius? Divide by 2. So be careful. Stuff like that for sure is going to pop up. Opposite of h, opposite of k. And again, not 4 squared, 2 squared. So be cautious. Like, okay, that's not a bad twist. That didn't take long. Let's pop one in now that's going to take a little more thought. So the next one seems innocent enough. You're like, okay, center's h and k. That's cool. Wait a minute. Point on the circle. So you're sitting here and you've got this circle. And we know that if we have the center and we have a point, I mean, that's the radius, okay? But I need to know how far it is from the center to the point on the circle. So we're gonna bust out a formula here. We'll write it down. How do I want to do this? Let's do it this way. We're gonna break the distance formula back out. May have been a while. We'll see. So basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking your two x values. You're going to be subtracting those. You're going to square the answer. So you're going to square the difference. Plus, we're going to do the same thing with the y values. And so when we find this distance, I'm just going to put in an r underneath it because it's the radius is what we're finding here, actually. And so the order that you put the points into here doesn't matter. That you keep the x's with the x's and the y's with the y's does matter. So when I'm looking for the distance here, okay, whether I do 0 minus 8 or 8 minus 0 makes no difference at all. Because it's in parentheses and I'm going to square it anyway. And the same with my y's. 0 minus negative 15 would be plus. So as long as you follow the form and keep your sign straight there, you're going to be fine. Now, do I necessarily want to type this whole thing into my calculator? Maybe. It depends. So square root on these in here, if you want to go that route, is second and x squared. You can see the little square root above there. Definitely, though, if you're going to try and do it all at once, you've got to have the parentheses there or signs are going to get all messed up. And you can actually just use this x squared button for squared. It won't put the x with it. Otherwise, you can use the little caret button over here. So 0 plus 15, I can use that for my squared. And then we hope that it comes out nice, and it did. So there's my radius. And now I can go ahead and get my equation. Well, these are both zeros. So that's just going to be x squared plus y squared. And 17 squared is 289. So that's the one twist that we can run into here. And the only time that that gets to be even a little less fun is if your center is moved. Now, your center is still going to be h and k. So when I go to find my radius, I'm going to call it r now instead. Again, make sure negative 10 minus negative 8. So that's why I put plus there. 14 minus 11. You're always subtracting the x's, subtracting the y's, and then taking their squares. You need to know your distance formula. Now, let's see if this one comes out nice. Hopefully it will. We may have to have a little discussion here on what happens if it doesn't come out nice and how we tackle that. But we haven't gotten into that stuff yet, so these should come out nice. Uh-oh. Now, I can show you a boo-boo that I made already. I'm going to finish my boo-boo so you can see what I did. Okay. So, as I was typing this in, I typed in my squared, and then I hit right arrow because I was thinking I was using the caret button, and I wasn't. But notice my radical stopped. That's not good. This is not going to turn out well for me. So make sure that radical stays in there the whole distance. So I'm going to start back over here real quick. And hopefully not do that again. Okay. Let's see. Did I type in everything correctly? I did. So negative 2 squared. Okay, so Hardy, what do I do now that it went decimally on me? Here's what we're going to do. So let's do the part underneath, but let's not put the radical. and see what happens and what we get. Because there is a way around this. Okay, so we got 13. So this, I'm going to leave it as the radical. You're going to see why I went this route, not the decimal. Because let's think about it for a minute. If you get a radical, if you get a decimal, we're going to keep it as the radical. Because now when I go to do it, x opposite of h squared plus y opposite of positive is minus 14 squared. When you square a square root, when I do r squared, which is what this is, that would be the square root of 13 squared. Squared and square root are opposites, so I just get to drop the radical. You're like, Hardy, could I have taken that decimal back here and just squared it? Well, that'd have been close. If I'd have kept it exact, I might have gotten to 13. But that's how we're going to have to deal with that. We won't get decimally stuff here. You may get a radical that you end up having to square. That's going to be the craziest thing that you could have happen. Okay? So, one last piece of the puzzle. Because we've done center and radius, we've done center and point on the circle. Where we know it's the radius, we just got to find the distance. The last and third option is what happens if we're given the diameter of the circle and we've still got to figure out the equation. So, here's what we're going to do. Again, visualize what's going on. So you're like, okay, so I got these two ends of a diameter that connect. The center is the middle or the midpoint of that diameter. So, job number one, find your center. Okay, how do I do that? I'm going to take my two x values. I'm going to add those up. And I'm going to divide by 2. I'm finding the middle. I'm finding the center. I'm going to take my two y values. I'm going to add them up. I'm going to divide by 2. Whatever each of those values are, 18 plus 2 is 20, divided by 2 is 10. 14 plus 2 is 16, divided by 2 is 8. Okay. So now I have the center. Oh, so now I have the center. I have these two endpoints. To find the radius, I need to know the distance from the center to a point on the circle. You can pick either one of these. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use this one because I don't like using the same number for both. And so now, to find my radius, I'm going to use those 2 points and do the distance, because that's going to tell me how far it is from here to here. So one more time. So we got 18 minus 10 squared, and it would get you the exact same answer if you use the 2, 14 minus 8 squared. Let's see if we get lucky this time and it comes out a nice whole number. Oh, that's nice. So my radius is 10. So now I have my center. I have my radius. These are the two magic values right here. So now finally we can get to the end and do our x Opposite of positive 10 is minus 10 squared. Y opposite of k would be minus 8 squared equals my radius squared, 10 squared, which is 100. Woofda, Hardy. Woofda. That's kind of wild. And so the last thing I want to do, just to make sure, again, we've got everything. Other stuff, if you want to see it, you've got notes. You're almost there. You're like, thank God we're almost there. You're like, we've kind of seen this one already, but I want to make sure we do one that's not at the center. Not as much work as we've been doing on those last couple. Here, I'm going to write down my original center, opposite of h, opposite of k. But then remember, translating right would mean we're adding 4 to the x value, because we're moving right, that's positive. And we're moving down 3, which means we're taking away 3 from the y value as we move down. 1 plus 4 is 5. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. We've got a new center. Write the equation. We're good. X opposite of h squared. Y opposite of k squared. My radius didn't change. You know the drill. Odds, 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 odds. Check things. Make sure they're going well. Start to give a peek to the test preview. Eerily similar to the test Friday. And I said it on the bit. Yeah, go ahead.